Hello everyone, this is Yasir from Fairfax Care Center. In previous video, we learned the basic functions of UFT. For example, create new action, record the script, understand and run the script, and view the result. In this video, we will learn some more useful concepts. For example, what is the keyword view, parameterization, checkpoint, output values, etc. And we'll understand what is the use of each feature in UFT. So let's start. Double click on HP Unified Function Testing icon. We're using the trial version. Click on Continue button. Keep the default web add-in and hit OK button. The first topic we will discuss is the keyword view. But before starting, let's create a new solution and quickly record a small script against login functionality of Mercury Tours web application. Go to the new menu and select Solution. Enter the name of the solution, for example, mt underscore 02 underscore login. Click on Create button. Right click on newly created solution. Go to Add menu and select Add new test menu item. Select the GUI test, that is actually the graphical user interface test. Enter the name of the test, for example, login. Click on Add button. Let's rename the action. Right click on Action 1. Select the option Rename. Enter the new name, for example, login, and press Enter. Click on Yes button. Let's go ahead and record the script against Mercury Tours web application login functionality. Click on Record button. In the address field, enter the Mercury Tours web application address if it is not already there. We will select the browser Microsoft Internet Explorer. Keep the default option in the rest of the fields and hit OK button. If your recording is not automatically started, click on Record button. So UFT is ready to record the script. You can see the floating recording bar. Our login script will be recorded in login test file. So let's go ahead and enter the username and password. My username is Fairfax QA and password is 123456. You can see as soon I enter my username and password, UFT recorded the both fields value in VB script. This is my username and this is my encrypted password. Let's click on sign in button. Button click event is also recorded. Now let's go ahead and close our browser and also stop our recording. You can see login functionality script has been generated successfully. Click on Save button to save the script. I have explained a little bit script architecture in previous video. For example, this is our parent object with the name Welcome Mercury Tours, and the type of this object is browser. Now browser parent object has a child object with the name Welcome Mercury Tours, and the object type is page. Next, the page parent object has child object web edit. These are actually the text field where we enter our username and password, and name of these objects are username and password. After entering the username and password, we clicked on sign in button. The sign in object has object type image that also exists in its parent object page. The next line of script is actually calling to sync method. Let's try to understand the sync concept. Sync time is the waiting time given to tool before executing the next step. For example, clicking on one link may take 1 second, 5 seconds, or 10 seconds, depending on various factors like server response time, network bandwidth, or application complexity. If this time is varying, then script will fail unless tester handles these time differences intelligently. So in simple words, sync waits until current step is fully loaded before executing the next step. Next, we will look into the keyword view. Go to View menu, click on Keyword View menu item. Keyword view has same steps that we recorded in editor or expert view, but it shows the table-like view where each step is a separate row in a table. For example, you can see the first row where we open the Internet Explorer browser and browse the Mercury Tours web application. In the second row, the second step, we enter the username and then we enter the password, and after that we clicked on sign in button. Similarly, each column represents different parts of the step. The first column item contains the item on which you want to perform the step. For example, username and password are web edit items where we entered our username and password, and sign in is the link image item on which we clicked after. The next column is operation column. Operation column contains the operation or function to be performed on items. For example, set operation assign the value of username and password to the web edits item. The value column contains the argument value or user entered value during recording of the script. The next column is documentation column. UFT automatically documents steps for easy understanding in the documentation column. You can see the documentation of the second step. Enter Fairfax in the username edit box, and for the third row, enter the encrypted password in the password edit box. This documentation is very comprehensive and it really helps to understand each step. So the bottom line is, keyword and expert views contain the same data but arranged in a different format for better understanding. You can perform all steps in both views. You can toggle between keyword and expert view by clicking on this button. Since we are in keyword view, let's discuss very important concept called parameterization. If you remember our manual testing lectures, we were manually entering the values in different controls, clicking on different buttons, and then checking the response. So the question can be, why we need to record these steps in the script? What benefit we can get out of it if we can do these steps manually? The answer is, UFT provides us the functionality to parameterize the input value so that we can define different combinations of valid and invalid data. UFT runs the test against all data combination and shows us the failed and successful scenario. So you don't need to run each scenario and enter data manually. This saves a lot of time and effort. So let's go ahead and see how we can achieve this functionality in UFT. First, let's parameterize the username. In the value column, click on the item you want to parameterize, for example username. You will see on the right side this small button is appeared. Double click on this small button. Go to second tab, data table. Then click on the bottom link, add new parameter. So there are two primary options. One is constant and the second is parameter. Select the second option, parameter, if it is not already selected. The drop-down is telling us where this parameter will go. In our case, it will go to the data table. The next option is the name of the parameter. UFT automatically assigns the name of the parameter that we can update. So let's enter the new name as username. Keep the default setting in location in data table as global sheet. And hit OK button. You will see in the data tab, new column username has been added. Let's create another parameter for password. Click on password item in value column. Double click on parameter button. Go to data table tab. Click on add new parameter link on the bottom. Enter the name for password parameter as password. Click on OK button. Click on Save button. If you would see the value column, the constant value Fairfax an encrypted password has been changed with this script line. That is data table, then username and DT global sheet. Similarly, data table, password, and then DT global sheet again. So let's try to understand this line of code. The first word data table represents this table where we have rows and columns. We recently declared two variables, username and password, in this table. You can go ahead and declare as many variables as you need, and they would be added in next columns C, D, E, and so on. The next word, username and password, are actually the name of the variable or the column in this data table. The next is DT global sheet. The DT global sheet is actually the data table type. You can see there are two tabs, global and login. If you would declare any variable in global sheet, it would be accessible to all tests in the solution. And the second tab, login, is automatically created on the name of the test login. The variables declared in login data table is only accessible to the login test. Let me revise how we declare the variable so that things get clear to you. Click on the value of the item, for example username. You will see this small button has appeared. Double click on this small button. So here is our data table. That is actually this table. We declare the variable username and password. Click on add new parameter link. From this drop down, we selected the location where we wanted to create our parameter. We selected the data table, that is this table. The next option, we specified the name of the parameter, for example username and password. Then we selected the sheet in the data table where we wanted to create our parameter. There are two options available. One is a global sheet, that is this tab, and the second is current action sheet, that is actually the login sheet. So this is how we created the username and password variable. In the simple words, this line of script is instructing the UFT that instead of using the constant value, get the value of the username and password from this data table. And the benefit of this data table is you can enter multiple username and password combinations. For example, let's go ahead and enter some more username and password. It can be anyone, both valid and invalid. Now the important point is UFT will run the login script against these all three username and password combinations and would show us the result at the end, which one is passed and failed. In other words, we are testing all valid and invalid scenarios of login functionality through automated tests in UFT. We do not need to execute or run these tests manually anymore. Let's run this test. You will see UFT will execute tests 3 times with 3 different username and password that we specified in our data table. First, second, and third. Before running the test, let's remove the quotes around Fairfax and the password. We know the first row is the valid test data and second and third are invalid test data. Click on Run button to run the test. Click on Run button again. So our test ran successfully against all three username and password combinations. This is the result window where you can see all steps of test execution. And the final state that is successful. One thing you might have noticed that we had only one valid username and password and other two username and password were invalid. Then why UFT result window is showing all tests successfully executed? It should show only one successful and two failed test results. The reason is UFT still don't know the pass and failed test conditions. For this, we can specify the checkpoint that we will learn next. Click on Save All button. Checkpoint is a verification point that compares current value of any control or object with expected value. If matches, checkpoint generates pass status, else it generates fail status. To keep it simple, let's take an example of Mercury Tours web application. When we enter the correct username and password in a username and password fields and hit on sign in button, then the expected landing page is find a flight page. Let's enter the username and password. And click on sign in button. Okay, so we successfully landed to flight finder page. Now on this flight finder page, you can take any object, for example, any image or any text or any other object and set it as a checkpoint. When the next time you will enter username and password and click on sign in button, then UFT will expect that checkpoint image, label or text on the landing page. If it would be able to find it, your test would be successful. Otherwise, your test would be failed. There are many checkpoints options available in UFT, for example, bitmap checkpoint, image checkpoint, text checkpoint, etc. To keep the thing simple, for now I will only describe standard checkpoint and in future we'll discuss other checkpoints. The standard checkpoint compares the expected value of object properties captured during recording to the object's current value during the run session. You can insert all checkpoints including standard checkpoint during script recording and also directly in the script. Since we have our recorded script, let's add a checkpoint in it. We already know that in the script, the first line is setting the username and the second name is setting the password field. The third line is clicking on the sign in button and the fourth line is calling the sync method. And by the definition of the sync method, we know the sync method will wait until all objects of find a flight page load successfully, so the ideal location of checkpoint is after sync method, so that all objects of landing page are available and UFT would be able to find the checkpoint object if it exists. To insert the standard checkpoint, right-click on the sync method line of script and select the option Insert Standard Checkpoint. This is Page Checkpoint Properties window. UFT will assign a default name to the checkpoint that you can also rename. And these are the recorded properties of Find a Flight page. For example, load time, how much time the page took to load, and the second number of images and number of links on the Find a Flight page. You can select or unselect any property you want to set as checkpoint. To keep the thing simple, let's select only number of links and unselect load time and number of images. Similarly, from all objects in a page group, only select number of links and uncheck images and broken links. As discussed earlier, the checkpoint statement should be after sync method, so select the second option after current step. Click on OK button. So our checkpoint find a flight Mercury_4 has successfully been added after the sync statement. Let's run the test. But before running the test, let me remind you that we have three combinations of username and password in our global data table sheet. The first username and password is a valid account, whereas second and third username and password are invalid accounts. So we should have only one passed test case and two failed test cases. Click on Run button. Click on Run button again. Okay, this is our run result window. Click on test flow link. You can see that our two test cases got failed, whereas the first valid account test case result is passed. You can check the test flow. So here is our test case result for row 1. If you remember, row 1 has valid username and password. All steps of first test case are passed, and overall status of the first test case also passed. For second and third test cases, where we have invalid username and password for row 2 and row 3, checkpoint step got failed. Because on the landing error page, number of links are different than the find a flight page. So this was the brief introduction of the checkpoints to verify the result of test cases. The next topic we will talk about is the output value. In output value, we can get the properties of any object, for example, text box, image, label, etc., during test execution and store it in desired location, for example, data table. This stored output value can be used as an input at different point in test script. For now, we will only focus on standard output value. Creating the output value step is similar to checkpoint, so let's start. For output value, I would use Yahoo Mail website as an example because I couldn't find an easy example in Mercury Web Tools application. So let's create a brand new test in the solution and record a new script for Yahoo Mail website. Right click on the solution untitled, go to Add menu and select Add New Test. Select the GUI test and enter the new name, for example, Yahoo Mail Test. Click on Add button. Our new test Yahoo Mail Test has been successfully added. Click on Action 1 and then click on Record button. Okay, so this is the URL of Yahoo Mail website. If it is not already there, please enter http://mail.yahoo.com in your address text box. Keep the default option in the rest of the checkboxes and hit OK button. If your recording is not automatically get started, please click on Record button again. Okay, so UFT opened the login.yahoo.com, that is actually the Yahoo Mail website. Now it is ready for recording. Enter any garbage text in email address text field. For example, test and click on sign in button. You can see this error message has appeared under password field saying please enter your password. We will take this error message as output value. This output value can be used to verify this test case where user enter only email address, leave the password field blank and click on sign in button. Or it can be used as an input to any other test script. We will modify our test script to take values from data table, means we'll parameterize the email and password fields and will dynamically get other error messages for different combinations. For example, enter password field but leave the email address field blank and click on sign in button. Okay, so our script has been recorded. Let's close the browser and click on the stop button to stop the recording. Okay, so here is very simple script. We entered the username test, then we clicked on sign in button. After that the sync method was called and then we closed the browser. Let's go ahead and save everything. Click on save all button. Let's parameterize the username text field. Go to view menu and select keyword view. Select the value of username field and double click on this small button. Go to Data Table tab and click on Add New Parameter link at the bottom. Enter the name of the parameter, for example username. Click on OK button. Go to your Data tab at the bottom and you can see username parameter has been created successfully. Let's go back to expert view. As you can see, the script has only username, but no password field script was recorded because we didn't enter any value in the password field while we were recording the script. So let me introduce you a new concept that you can create the script for password field and add it in the current script. Create the space for password field. Now click on record button. Enter any value in the password field and click on stop recording button. So we successfully recorded the script for password field only. Let's parameterize the password field. Go to keyword view. Select the value of the password field. Double click on this small parameter button. Go to Data Table tab. Click on Add New Parameter link. Enter the name of the parameter, for example, password. Hit OK button. So parameter for password field has been added. Go to expert view. Now our base is ready to set the output value. Click on Sign In and then click on Active Screen tab. The Active Screen tab shows you the current state of actual website page at particular step that we select. Let's format our script a little bit and then we can understand it better. Click on Sync method. And you can see in Active Screen tab, we have screen with error message. Because while recording the script at this step, we clicked on Sign In button without entering the password field. So this is actually the output value of that test case. Select the text, please enter your password. Right click and select the option Insert Output Value. So the web element with the value please enter your password has been selected. Click on OK button. This is output value properties window. You can specify the name of output value. For example, Yahoo login error. And these are two properties of the web element class object. Select the inner text property. Click on modify button. Here you can specify the variable name in a global sheet for the error message. Keep the name as error message. Click on OK button. In the insert statement options, please select after current step. Click on OK button. So our output value step has been added. Go to Data tab and you can see the error message variable is also added. Let's increase the size. Now let's enter the different combinations of username and password. Leave the password field blank. In the second test case, leave the username field blank and enter the password. For example, 123456. To get the actual error message, make sure your web element inner text property has variable name and not the constant string. In order to check that, right-click on web element and select Object Properties. Click on Inner Text Property Value and then click on Configure the Value button. Select the second option, Parameter, and then select the name of the parameter, Error Message. Click on OK button. Click on OK button again. So let's understand what we just did. The web element is the label that has error message, please enter your password. Now for these two test cases, we will have two different error messages. That's why we configure this web element to take the current error message from data table error message variable. So that during the test execution, UFT should have right error message, not always this constant error message, please enter your password. So let's run the test cases and hopefully things would be clear to you. Click on Run button. Click on Run button in Run dialog box. You saw that we got two error messages for these two test cases and then they disappeared. So let's go to our last run result window. If you are not already there, let's go to View menu and select Last Run Result option. Here you can see the test flow for row 1 and row 2. Click on Standard Output step. So for the row 1, where we have only username and blank password, the standard output value is please enter your password. Let's go to row 2. Click on standard output step. So for the row 1, if you remember, we have only password and the blank username, and the standard output value is invalid ID or password. Please try again using your full Yahoo ID. So this is how you get the output value. You saw that during test execution, these output values were available in data table error message variable. So you can use these output value to input to some other step during execution. Click on Save All button to save everything.